Well, well, well. Hasn't the random algorithm served us up a treat today? Back to back Red Bull transferring boys yesterday. Pierre Gasly today. Alex Albon is the challenge ahead. How do we feel? His 2019 season went just like Gasly. A very different season than most. Obviously having that mid-season switch during the summer break. But I think it's been a really strong rookie year for Alex, and I'm going to really enjoy talking about him today. If you're new around here and you're finding me for the very first time, I'm imagining you're missing Formula One just an ickle bit. So what I'm doing for you lovely folk at home is from today, well, December 1st, right through to Christmas Day. I'm doing a video every single day, most of them being driver 2019 reviews. And yes, today we're covering Alex Albon, the Thai rookie who was brought in at the very last minute to Toro Rosso. He was supposed to be driving for Nissan in Formula E, but thanks to, well, a bit of carnage in Daniel Ricciardo moving away from Red Bull, moving to Renault, Red Bull were really struggling to find or to bring in a driver into their Toro Rosso team, and they were looking at Dan Ticktum, but he didn't have enough super license points, so they had to almost bite the bullet. And Alex Albon, a driver once part of the Red Bull Young Driver program, they let him go. They had to almost say, please come back, we need you. And end of 2019, he's at the big team. He's teammates with Max Verstappen, and I don't think anybody in their wildest dreams, even Alex himself, would have been expecting that at the start of the season. Now with Pierre, we spoke about Toro Rosso first, and then we went back to Red Bull, but I'm gonna do the same thing, start with Toro Rosso for Albon, and then talk about Red Bull, because that very start of the season, considering he came in so late, considering he was third in Formula 2 the year prior, I don't think many people were expecting a lot, I think's fair enough to say, from Alex Albon. I think very quickly, in that Chinese Grand Prix, starting in the pit lane, working his way back to points, I think people really understood that actually, this guy has a bit of speed, and maybe if we give him a little bit of time, up against an experienced driver in Danny Kvyat, who had his own story to tell, to be totally honest, but very quickly he established himself that on his day he could definitely beat Kvyat, and more often than not was a good match for Danny Kvyat. I don't think many of us expected him to get that jump up over the summer to Red Bull. I think we expected Kvyat to get the nod, especially with Danny getting that incredible P3 in Germany. But as I said at the time, I actually think during that German Grand Prix it was Alex who was finished P6 in the end. I think he had the better race, fighting Lewis Hamilton off in the wet, and Albon actually made some brilliant overtakes. His first ever wet race in Formula 1, I felt, was very, very impressive. And since moving to Red Bull, I think it's been even more impressive, considering the fact that this is a car he has not driven in winter testing and had a million laps in. I think he's been the biggest surprise of 2019. His head-to-head battle with Max Verstappen looks a little bit like this, but of course he's only spent half of the season, so it's all a little bit skewed in that sense. 8-1, the quali battle in Max Verstappen's favour, but the race battle is a hell of a lot closer. 5-4 just in favour of Max Verstappen. The points battle, of course, is quite a large gap, 278 to 92, and the championship position, third for Max Verstappen and 8th for Alex Albon. Very easily, though, that could have been 4th for Verstappen and 6th for Albon if things had gone a different way in the final couple of weekends. Albon, no wins, no poles, and no podiums. Game so close in Brazil. Of course, we'll talk about that in a moment. 8th place in the championship, 92 points, which in a rookie year, almost scoring 100 points, I think is very respectable. 5th place 4 times in the course of 2019 is his best qualifying record this year, and his best race record is a 4th place in Suzuka a few months ago. But it was since moving to Red Bull where Alex's season really came alive. That fire in his belly that we saw a little bit in the start of the year. Once he moved to Red Bull straight away, for me, that Belgian Grand Prix weekend was his best of the season by a country mile. For me, one of the drives of the season was Alex Albon's drive in Spa. Not only did he start from the back and work his way through to 5th place, when you consider that he'd never driven in that car before, when you consider the horrific weekend that Spa weekend was for all of the drivers, the entirety of the Formula One community, the overtakes this guy was pulling off, and considering that was where Gasly was heavily criticised in the first half of the year, that he wasn't brave enough, wasn't daring enough, wasn't gutsy enough, Albon straight away put those wrongs right. My move of the season, Alex Albon, was through that second sector on Daniel Ricciardo, through the corner with no name, is its actual name. Ridiculous move. No one's overtaking there. To do it on Daniel Ricciardo in your first race weekend for Red Bull was a real statement of intent, and getting all the way up to P5 in a weekend where Max Verstappen didn't score was very, very impressive indeed. And after that race weekend, Monza, once again, didn't have that pressure on. Verstappen had to start from the back of the race, so Albon had a little bit of an open playing field, if you will. Raced to P6, finished behind the two Renaults, which was a little bit disturbing, but Alex himself didn't start super high up and had plenty of brilliant overtakes. Singapore was a P6. That was an okay race for him. That P4 in Japan was the one that stands out on the timing sheets or the scoring sheets, but even that race was helped by Leclerc and Verstappen not scoring. Well, Leclerc did score, but you know what I mean, a little bit further down. But that race in Brazil is the one that I don't want to miss. A real coming-of-age kind of drive it seemed to be on the surface. Now, we've seen in the later half of 2019, or the later half of the second half, Alex is very good at securing P6 in quali and staying there in the race and making up for other drivers in front's mistakes, which is brilliant. I think it's something he's going to have to work on next year, but considering the amount of time he's had in the car, I think it's allowable, and the races he has had, I think the majority of them have been very impressive. Brazil qualified 6th, and for the race it was looking a little bit lacklustre, but in those final stages of the race, it was all coming together for him. Did really well at the safety car restarts, had a battle with Lewis Hamilton. It looked to be first podium in Formula One, and Lewis Hamilton, of all people, to take away your first podium in Formula One. Hamilton, of course, thanks to the contact, was given a 5-second penalty. But it was Albon's first real opportunity for a podium in Formula One. And so, I mean, unlike Gasly, unlike Sainz that weekend, he didn't go away with any points. Didn't come away with a podium. And ultimately, if you look at the standings, that cost him P6 overall. But when you consider the amount of points he had in the first half of the year, the fact that he was even in contention for P6, I think, is very respectable. And I don't want to miss the crashes he has had in practice and in qualifying, like in Russia. But I think for the most part, when push comes to shove in the race, I think Alex has proved himself that he can overtake. There is definitely potential there. He's in his rookie year. He's up against arguably what I think a lot of people would consider, including myself, one of the best drivers in a very long time in Max Verstappen. So, of course, he's not going to be right on the pace. But I think what we've seen is a driver very competent, with a lot of potential, and is someone I'm really looking forward to seeing next year, to seeing how much he can take the fight to Verstappen. When will it be when he gets his first podium? Because I think it will come eventually. But also how much time will Red Bull give him, considering the amount of time they gave Pierre Gasly. But overall, really strong year from Alex Albon. I'm going to give him an 8. There's definitely room for improvement, and finishing and starting P6 each weekend, which he hasn't done to be fair, but there's been a slight trend at the end of 2019. If he does that next year, I think there'll be issues. But so far, a really strong start, and that time in Toro Rosso as well, very respectable. 9, whoa, not quite 9, 8 out of 10 from me. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't worry, another video got you covered for the rest of December, so if you're new, feel free to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below, and I hope to see you in the next one.